Hey everybody, Andy here. Just a quick message before this week's video. We've had a little bit of a problem with Studio Canal. As you can see on screen, we've got a copyright claim from them, which is blocking the video in a whole bunch of different countries. They have an odd, arbitrary rule that we've run into before in the past. As you can see with Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, only 3 minutes of footage is allowed from their content throughout the entire review, irregardless of fair use. So we are going to honor that. We're going to stick to just 3 minutes as they've requested, but it's going to mean less footage on screen to illustrate the points being made. I do hope you still enjoy the video because I think this is a great episode and there's loads we get to talk about and cover some really cool topics, including French New Wave in general. So do enjoy. Thank you. On with the show.
Right. I was going to stop you before you tried to start an intro because we're not going to have an ad hoc intro today. Do you know why we're not going to have an ad hoc intro today? Because England are through to the semi-final of the World Cup against Croatia, and there's a huge possibility we could do it. Do you know why there's no intro today? It's coming home.
Thank you very much for joining us for an episode of Film Club. I'm one of your hosts, Andy Harrison. To my right, as always, it's the hooligan himself, Andy Knowlton.
It's coming home.
Do you see, by the way, those people who jumped on the ambulance down in London?
Fuck off, really.
Not on.
Not cool.
Not on.
Cool.
They destroyed the thing. It's been taken off the road.
Fuck off.
They are currently the police are currently looking for him.
There's that, and there's buses jumped on. That wasn't cool, that part. Non-violent happiness and non-violent celebrations.
Every single week in Film Club, we invite you along to watch a film with us. We dive into some cinema's best before coming back here to talk it out. Andy, what have we been watching this week?
Breathless, which is what England made me.
It's just going to continue that the whole thing.
Mate, it is. It's coming home.
So give us the quick rundown, people who don't know at home. What is Breathless all about?
For those people who it's coming home, sorry, I'm going to stop now. The rundown is basically you have a guy called Michel Pocciard. He likes women, he likes cars, and he likes to be a bit of a naughty person. It's about his... You done there?
You carry on.
It's about his relationship with a woman, or the one particular, and it's about his... What's she called again? It begins with P.
Patricia.
Patricia, that's the one. Thank you. I just knew you got there. Patricia, and it's about his relationship, the fact he loves her, but he's a bit mean, and it's about him running away from the police, really, and it's about their relationship. It's about his little snippet into his life, and then the final demise of his life. French, made by Jean-Luc Godard. Isn't it his first, I read?
This is his first film, and for anybody who doesn't know, this marks the beginning of French New Wave in cinema.
What you said last week about, what did we watch last week? What did we watch last week? We did the first film by...
Denis Villeneuve.
Yeah. So you said it's a fantastic first film. This, Breathless, a fucking fantastic first film.
Oh yeah. I mean, so do you know the story behind French New Wave as a movement?
I actually read about it briefly. It reminds me of because when you go on about postmodernism, it's a bit different a film than it is music. It's slightly kind of the same, but there's different. You have different. If you look into it more, it's different. So in terms of music, postmodernism is the idea that if you look about the 1940s, you had like people, not contemporary, you had like kind of classical music that followed the same rhythm, and the postmodernists were the people who wanted to look for the new sound, look for the new system. That's where electronic music kind of came into play. It's the fact that people wanted to look at different ways to produce this music that wasn't conforming to the standard. Whether it was cheap, you look at stuff like the Beatles, you look at the way they messed about with tape techniques. You look at people like they're called Kraftwerk, where they messed about with creative synthesizers.
That's where French house came from as well.
Yeah, well, French house, like fucking grunge, everything like that. Post-punk stuff, like house, everything on it. All it is postmodernism. It's the idea of straight and moving forward like this. It kind of started in 1940. And my point is, coming from this, is that it seemed like a similar thing for French New Wave. It was the idea that they wanted to go past normal narratives, like standard techniques and stuff like that. They wanted to find a new way to go forward. Cheaper, that everyone could kind of like get around and do, where you had like access to less equipment. The budget was a lot less, because I was thinking they made like dollies out of shopping carts and stuff like that. That's what I read, and I thought it was fantastic. It was really, really interesting, because when you go and watch the film, you kind of see those couple of those like techniques, and most notably is the editing, what you told me before.
Yeah. So I mean, just back up a little bit to the history of French New Wave as an idea, because it's really important to contextualize it, I think. And French New Wave is basically born out of post-war France.
Oh,
so what happens
interesting.
is after World War II ends, France obviously racked up this huge war debt with America. And America writes that off. And there's a whole bunch of reasons to why they write that off. But one of them is it lifts France's ban on a lot of foreign products, but also foreign cinema. So they would only allow like a couple foreign films a year to be shown in France.
Oh, really?
And as part of this wiping of the debt, that was lifted. So like loads of Hollywood films started getting shown in France. And French filmmakers who had been quite incubated previously suddenly got to see like the works of these great Hollywood directors. So they got to see like Hitchcock, and they got to see like John Ford, and they got to see people who had been making really sort of creative films, and they started to understand. I can't remember the guy's name who really put a pin in this, but they started to notice that these guys who had made films like Hitchcock and like Ford, they weren't making studio films. They were making, like, when you saw a Hitchcock film, it felt like a Hitchcock film.
Yeah, so they had their own, like, kind of signature on it.
Exactly. They started to notice directors
like John Ford,
who were able to control the process and say something with their work. And they started to understand that these people were artists, and they were just choosing cinema and film as their method of portraying their art.
Yeah, their medium.
So this is where something called the auteur theory comes from. And the auteur theory, you don't need to go into the weeds on it, but the auteur theory is basically the director is the author of the film, and that somebody can have a real stamp on a film, and like they were the only person that could make that film in that way. They had something to say, they were important, they are the artist behind that work.
Yeah.
So that's where you'd eventually get people like David Lynch, and you'd get like Kubrick and stuff. You know, you don't argue that those films could have been made by somebody else. No, those films were their films. And this is where all this is born from. This is born from a bunch of people who there was 4 or 5 people. Actually, I've got the names here rather than guessing at it. It's 5. So you got Francois Truffaut, Jean-Luc Godard, Eric Romer, Claude Chabrol, and Jacques Rivette. And these guys were all known as the Cahiers du Cinéma, and they all worked.
Like
they all worked at this. I think it was a newspaper or a publicist anyway, as film critics. So they would sit around and criticize film and posterize on film, and they had thoughts about like what film was and how it was constructed. And eventually they went, well, let's put some of this into practice. And they were the ones who started to notice this trend, and obviously being suddenly influenced by this American stuff, they also wanted to find out like where was the French cinema as well, because if you have years and years and years of suddenly being influenced by all this Hollywood and like loads of stuff coming over from America, you start to lose the identity of what is French cinema. And they wanted to figure out what French cinema could be now that you integrated all these techniques you're now seeing from America, but what could they bring to the table as well? Not to stand against what was coming from America, but to put the two together. And so they took this idea of like, anytime the rule book on cinema said you must go left, they went, well, what if we went right
That's
instead?
so interesting, because look like where it's brought it now. And French New Wave's always been, I think it's a phrase that a lot of people know, even if you don't know me. I mean, it's not something I've ever watched, but I've always knew about what the name French New Wave.
It's like it's arguably the most important movement in cinematic history.
That's what I heard. Yeah, it was like.
And to your point earlier, a great, wonderful example that we see in Breathless is the editing style.
Yeah,
the editing style is like previously you wanted editing to be hidden. You didn't show editing. Editing was like the invisible thing. You don't want people to notice they're watching a film. You don't want to be immersed in the film. They said, well, what if an audience did notice they were watching a film?
I like that part. My favourite use of the editing was when, Michelle, it's towards the start of the film. I think it's after about 20 minutes. It's when I text you. Because that was the scene I was thinking, that's fucking cool. When he's looking for cash, and he leaves the car, he's on the other side of the road, he's in the phone booth, then he goes in the hotel, asks for a key, then suddenly he's in the apartment, and you know, it's quick cuts like that, but you know what's going on because it follows like a kind of linear pattern. One scene leads to another, but it's very quick. And I thought, you know what, that's very smart, that's very well done.
These are the guys like really like stuff like Breathless helped get the pacing to where we have cinema now. Like if you ever watch old pre-1960s films, they can be quite slow. Like you often watch like your character approach a scene, like they'll walk up to a building, they'll open the door, they'll go in the building, and then they'll meet the person they're going to have a conversation with. French New Wave was like, well, what if we just cut all that stuff out?
I also read that part of the reason that the editing was a huge part of this film was the final product was a lot longer, and his producer, whoever had it, told him to cut it down. So that's when he started incorporating those quick cut moments.
Yeah.
The only part I don't think it really works on, or it doesn't work as well on, is when the conversation she's having with the journalist guy, the bit in the side sort of thing, and there's sort of these conversations shifting. Whereas now, obviously, there's a different technique you can get around that, or you can film it long. But I just assume that that's a case of he'd already filmed that and then got told to cut it, and that was just a long scene in itself because it looked like a long shot scene. So that's the only time where it kind of comes down a little bit. And the end, to be honest, a little bit. There's a tiny bit at the end where it kind of cuts, and I'm just like, oh, that jumped a bit too far for me.
Yeah.
But everything else, it works absolutely fantastically. I really, really enjoyed this.
And then the flip side of this, which I find to be one of the most stylistically interesting things about French New Wave, was although they were happy to chop bits out of films as needed, they would also do immensely impressive long takes.
See, yeah, okay, that's very interesting. There was one really good one on here. I think it's the end scene when they're in that apartment, the last apartment, and the camera swivels around all the time.
It's going backwards as they're walking around the apartment.
But it follows her going around there, like big long conversation, then back to him. I thought that's very, very, very good, very impressive, very well played.
They do it all the time, and obviously part of that is wanting the film to feel more natural and real and feel a bit documentary.
You mentioned this the other week, yeah.
Partly because of budgets, partly because of their decision that they wanted things to feel a bit more relatable. They started shooting things like in a way more documentary style, very small lighting setups, if any sort of lighting setups. Great example is that long scene in the bedroom.
Yeah, it's a great one. I like that.
They spend so long in the apartment, and there's almost no lighting going on in that other than the natural lighting.
Nicely done that. Yeah, it was good that. And that what I liked about that scene, moving on from editing, is that is probably the central part of their relationship. That's when you hear about these two actors, actor and actress, and their chemistry is superb.
Yeah,
I really enjoy it. Because in his first film, these guys were well known at the time. I don't know whether or not you might be able to help us out there.
Yeah, let us know. Though it was a trend in French New Wave to not use known actors.
So it was Jean-Paul Belmondo, who was Michel Picard, and it was Jean Seberg. Oh God, my phone just turned off. Who was Patricia Franchini.
So unusually, because normally before we do film club, we don't talk about the film at all. This is like how you guys get our fresh takes on this. But you texted me this week and went, This morning, I went, I'm really enjoying this.
Honestly.
So what was it about this?
It was that scene. It was that scene I was on about, the quick cuts and the thing. There was everything that built up to that. Also, to be fair, it was that scene and the actual character. I don't know why I like him, but fucking hell, you just have to. No, I tell you what. Actually, no, it wasn't. It wasn't that quick cut solidified my opinion of I do like this. Oh man, a great scene is when he's going the car down the road, and he's just like he's talking to himself. He's singing. He's going, "I love France" and all this. And I'm thinking, I like this guy. He was before he turns out to be a bit more of a dick, but you still like him anyway. And he's talking about, I love France, And then he turns the camera, breaks the fourth wall, which I assume is French New Wave movement. It's away from normal film, stuff like that.
Yeah. Because again, what can we do which is you don't do it.
Yeah. And then he goes, if you don't like cities, if you don't like the beach and stuff like that, go away, or something like that, bugger off.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, he's so likable, he's such a dick. But he's so likable. Then obviously it came on and there was that part where the thing, and I was just like, Andy, I need to text you. I know we don't normally do it, but it's really, really good. I think for me to go, I'm not really. It's what I mean. I never used to watch old films. And now, film club and stuff like that, it's really cool seeing this and seeing like hearing the history there of New Wave and how it came about. Weirdly enough, for it was like post-war, kind of like almost like a recession. And this came into play because of that. It's so. There's a massive port there. It's really cool to hear. Fucking hell, it's quite loud. It's going to be picked up.
And so is that even picked up on the mic? So you're just pointing out a noise that they can't even hear?
I reckon that'll be picked up on the mics,
yeah. In case you did hear a massive boat, we do actually shoot by a river. So
yeah, there's a fucking huge boat there letting off its fucking horn. So it's really cool to seeing the history, but also seeing these old films that are really, really enjoyable. There's a word I was going to use, endearing. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But I do know why. And this film's really endearing, but for the wrong reasons, because that guy's a dick. But you like him. I don't know how you feel.
Yeah, well, I think he writes this really interesting line, and I think it's brought up nicely in the bedroom scene where she wants to find out what's behind the mask.
Yeah.
And he he can't. I don't think he knows what's behind the mask. And this comes up in this wonderful sort of like, we were talking a second ago how I was ranting on about how French filmmakers were kind of thinking about where is their place with an American influence and all that sort of stuff. And what I love about Breathless is that thematically, that's exactly what Breathless is all about. It's about a French person and an American person, and the integration of those two things. And,
and that's really good.
Michel is all about he's personified himself after Humphrey Bogart.
As the French new. Oh, right.
Because when there's that moment where he goes past the cinema and he stops and looks at the poster and he looks at Humphrey Bogart's picture, and obviously he's kind of dressing himself like a Humphrey Bogart character. That's why he keeps doing the lip thing.
Yeah.
Because he's lost in this world of American cinematic influence. That's why he's driving down the road and he picks up a gun and he starts waving that around. It's probably why he kills somebody, because he doesn't understand the implication of it. Really, he's a little lost in that world. And it's kind of about French and American cinema.
That is a fucking great underlying theme.
Yeah, really interesting. And I love the music, by the way.
Oh yes, it was a really good bit of So some because it kind of coexists with the amazing shots, the overhead shots of whether he use a camera, I don't know what a helicopter, do a lot of views, but there's a really good scene where it's overlooking the whole of France, where the Arc de Triomphe, and it's a really, really cool jazz number. I'm fucking feeling it. I'm like, yeah, this is fucking Parisian. I'm getting right into it. Then later on, you got they play Mozart, don't they, on the record player, and it's kind of like Dajek sound, and they're just chilling out, and they're going on about my dad was a clarinet player. He was really good in all this, and it's acknowledging the music, it's acknowledging everything there, and it's it's in the end it could arguably be quite self-referential as film. So going on from what you said, but yeah, the use of music is superb. You said something earlier about the lips thing. Yep. I fucking love that end scene where she turns to the camera, says, "What does so-and-so mean?" Because he calls her so-and-so.
And she does it.
She does. I was so fucking well played. Do you reckon, going on underlying themes as well, I noticed there was a lot of, I don't know if it was just because of how old this film was, or it's in itself, it's on, what's the word? It was just, it's an underlying theme, but the idea of sexism. You look at that interview later in the film, and that guy's going about men want women, women want money. If you look at all the women that are with men, they're bastards and all this. Do you reckon that was pointing out the fact that the women were objectified and stuff like that, or do you reckon that was just because of the time in itself?
I think it's definitely highlighting it a lot, because she's actually quite a very well developed character.
Exactly, she always says how I'm independent, stuff like that, and he's very like this to her. He's very putting her down like this, but also more putting her down more than complimenting. And she kind of almost like she likes it, sort of thing. Yeah, he compliments her, and when he insults her, she smiles. Yeah, and it's just kind of it's just kind of where he's. Back then, this is where we're going with women. Obviously, it's on a more, what's the word? It's on a more heightened level.
Yeah, so if she hadn't have been such a well-developed character, I'd agree with you. I think that it would lean into a little bit of just misguided sexism of the time. Yeah. But it's clearly kind of juxtaposing his more aggressive, sexualized, sexist ways against her way more.
Not just him, but the guy with the interview as well.
The guy with the interview as well, yeah.
Or even the reporter, not reporter, the detective, and he's going, do that, young girl, and he's very belittling. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's just a detective, but there seems to be but she rises through it, she keeps her head high, and she carries on. What a great example of that end scene there.
And she's probably the most culturally rounded of everybody in the film.
Absolutely.
As well. Absolutely. She really enjoys art and books and music and stuff. So
whereas everyone else is a bit more one-minded.
Yeah. But it's just I think it's a very simple yet kind of deep film. There's a lot going on in the film, but the structure of it's very, very simple. And what a ultimately charming way to kick off this immensely influential movement in cinema.
I want to watch more French New Wave now.
Just as a side note, in case anybody's going to correct us, I know this isn't technically the very first French New Wave film. It's often credited as being the second, but, doesn't matter. So anyway, there is Breathless, or its French name is...
Oh, God, a bout de souffle.
Hey, well done. I don't think it's souffle, that's not...
Souffle.
A bout de souffle. You can let us know in the comments, or you can hit us up on Twitter what you thought of a bout de souffle.
A bout de souffle.
We'll be back once again next week, though, where this week, Andy, we're taking a request from Hollanda Chiquita,
Well played.
we're going to be taking a look at The Drop. So we're going completely away from French.
I've never even heard The Drop before you mentioned it then.
We're bringing it completely to contemporary cinema. We're going to be taking a 2014 film featuring Tom Hardy. If you want to be part of the club, get watching. We'll see you guys back here next week to talk about The Drop.
Also, next week, it might have come home, so it's coming home.
Swear to God, if it comes home, we're going to have it here. That's a promise.
What do you mean it's going to have it here?
We're going to have the trophy.
Oh, it's coming home.